Welcome to this week's
Hmm.
episode of Practice What You Teach. We have Jessica with us today. Hello.
Hello.
So, Jessica, tell us a little bit before we get into your skill, which I'm excited to do and practice with you today. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kimberly. I'm so excited to chat and to learn alongside you guys and to teach a few things that I know. So, I am actually a registered nurse. I've been practicing for 12 years, and I've actually been in the medical field for 15 years. I'm also a self love life coach for women, and I'm a certified trauma informed breathwork facilitator. So, as part of my mission, just to kind of chunk it down to something a little simple for people to understand, I basically help women reclaim their emotional health and their well being and learn how to fall in love with themselves in this journey that we call life. So, there it
Mhm.
is in a nutshell.
Very important stuff. Very, very important
Yes.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, how did you get into the breath work side of things? How did you get introduced to that?
So I'm so glad you asked because I've been on a personal healing journey for quite some time, including therapy. I've gone to therapy since my early 20s for clinical depression and trauma and things like that. And I also lost my mother for almost a little over 4 years ago. So that was a really traumatic event for me. So I started searching. I started searching for other things outside of just traditional therapy and, diet and exercise and just healthy living because I felt like I needed more. I felt like I was really in my head a lot. I tend to over intellectualize and try to escape my feelings and the sensations that are trapped in my body. So when I found breathwork, I kind of stumbled upon it and I was just blown away. And then the more research I did, I was already coaching, and I was like, gosh, this is making such a huge difference for me. This is going to make a huge difference for my clients. So I actually searched around until I found a program that was trauma informed to get my certification because I felt like that was really, really important.
Mhm.
And here I am. It's been an incredible journey, and I can't wait to keep going with it because it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting to hear about just the different like approaches to it, right? And that they're, the important piece of kind of the trauma informed side of things, because that does bring some extra challenges and some extra kind of like caveats to it. So good to hear
Mm-hmm.
that there's some training that kind of included that in there. And I imagine that that's been really helpful for you, not only personally, but also professionally. Um,
Yes.
so tell us for those who don't know, what is breath work? Like what we breathe all day, every day. So what exactly
I
is
know.
breath
I
work?
know. It's such a great question because it's so popular. It's such a buzzword these days, like breathwork, breathwork. But like, what the heck is it, right? So my basic understanding of it is that it's really an ancient healing modality that has been around for centuries. And if you kind of look into the history of when it came to the U.S., there is some literature that shows it kind of started to gain popularity in the 70s. And it's just evolved ever since. And basically, it's any sort of intentional breathing with certain breath patterns. And like I said, intention. So it's not just throwing yourself into it. I mean, you can, but that's not a very trauma informed way to do it. Um, you really want to set an intention for each time that you practice. And there's different ways to do it. There's different categories of breath work. So I won't go into all of that, but just in a nutshell, you're just using the power of your breath with intention, with a specific duration and a specific kind of breathing pattern to basically help you shift your energy. It helps you process difficult emotions. It helps you gain new clarity. It helps you kind of get out of your mind and into your body.
Mhm.
And there is some actual medical science that shows a lot of physiological benefits to breath work. It's not just incredibly powerful for our mental health and our emotional health and helping us process trauma, but it's also got so many just physiological benefits to it as well.
Oh yeah, I mean the mind and the body are in constant communication, and sending messages back and forth to each other, having an influence on one another, sometimes more than we realize or give them credit for. And there
Yes.
can be some really powerful ways that we can use our body to um, kind of comfort, regulate some kind of things going on in our mind, and vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Yeah, but breath work can be one of those things that kind of starts with the body first, and then the mind can benefit
Mm-hmm.
from it. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I like what you said about regulation because one thing I want to add to that is and when you're mentioning like the body and then the mind, because if you're anything like me, the mind can try to swoop in and protect us and kind of block us from truly processing and healing some things because it wants to keep us safe.
Mhm.
So if we can have an effective tool to not tell the mind that it doesn't have an important job, but to give it a different focus, and then let the body take over with its wisdom about how it is ready and wanting to heal itself on that level, and they get to work together. And then the nervous system regulation is a big part of that because, as we know, our physical and our emotional and mental health are directly related to the state of our nervous system.
Mm,
So, breath work is a super easy, quick, powerful tool that you can practice to help you regulate your nervous system so that you can experience your life in a different way, in a safer way, in a less chaotic way.
yes. Yeah, yeah. So tell us about kind of the question of the show, right? What is
Yeah.
the breath work strategy, technique? Like, what's the thing that you do yourself in your own personal life that you also teach the clients and the women that you work with?
Yes. So, something that's been coming up for me lately, and that has in my past been typically one of my bigger challenges, is dealing with anger and conflict, right? So I always try to teach my clients and practice myself having an emotional processing routine that involves various somatic tools like breath work, as well as bringing in some body movement and some vocal expression. So I kind of want to focus today on just telling you my process for anger specifically, and I'll kind of walk you through like a step by step the way that I do it.
Yeah, yeah, because that's an emotion that literally we all experience. And if you don't
Mhm.
want to, it's a very normal human experience, and you're allowed to feel angry sometimes. But
Yes.
sometimes it lingers longer than we want it to, or shows up at more intense ways than we want it to, or sometimes it doesn't feel like the right place or the right time to be in that feeling. And so it helps to have some things we can do to regulate it, relate to it a little bit differently. And so what does it look like for you? Tell us about it.
Yeah. And anger is so important, right? Like there's always a message behind the anger. And if we can process it in this way, more effectively in a more healthy way, then we can learn from the anger too. And we're not then plagued with shame and guilt of like, oh, I didn't handle that so well and I maybe hurt someone, emotionally or did some damage, right? So just want to throw that in there too because anger is such an important topic. So basically, here's how it goes, right? So the first step, right? You just notice when you feel angry. So getting familiar with stopping yourself and just noticing, like, own it in the moment. Like, I feel angry right now, or I feel triggered. People use different words. Usually, it's if you're triggered, it's like my body is in a heightened state of emotion. You may be that fight or flight or freeze kind of state. So there's a lot of physiological things that you'll notice, but one of those physiological things is the actual emotion you're feeling. So if you can just recognize that is step one. Okay, I'm angry right now. So then you have to choose, well, what do you do about that, right? For me, I usually have to say, okay, my first step after I notice that I'm angry is I need to figure out how to be safe. Like I need to go to a safe place. If it's not right here in front of this person, let's say there's another person involved,
Sure.
then maybe I need to walk away, right? So I always say, like, I need to find safety right in this moment. So maybe you have to stop the argument or the discussion and say, I need a couple minutes. I need to walk away. If you're at work, maybe you go to the bathroom or you walk outside or to your car, right? If you're at home, maybe you just go into a different room. Maybe you go into your closet, wherever you feel safe, and you can give yourself like 5 or 10 minutes to kind of cool off, calm your nervous system, and then proceed with the rest of your day, knowing that, hey, later on, when I have some time to dedicate to processing a little bit further, and we'll get into that towards the end of these steps, then you can address, a little more deeply with some different tools like journaling, and maybe taking it into your next therapy session to talk about, stuff like that. But yeah, that's step one. Notice it, own it in the moment. I'm feeling angry. Walk away, find a safe place so that you can take 5 to 10 minutes to yourself to kind of cool off, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to stop there and see if you had anything to comment before I move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I know that I say a lot in my work is like, if we can name it, we can change it. And so being able to like first name that emotion, if we can't name it and we don't realize what it is that we're dealing with, it's going to make it really hard. And so, yeah, that totally makes sense. The first thing is we just got to recognize, got to have that mindfulness of kind of like
Yes.
what is going on in the experience. Mhm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So then the next step is, this is again kind of during that 5 or 10 minutes, because that's usually, unless you're by yourself and you have the next hour or 30 minutes to like go deep, which is great. That is ideal if you can, but that's not always the world we live in. We're busy women with careers and families and all the things. So within this 5 or 10 minute, you've gotten yourself into the closet, the car, the bathroom, outside in the woods, wherever. The next step is, again, own your feelings, right? So give yourself that unconditional presence to own and feel the anger. So this is the uncomfortable part if you're not used to this, or even if you are, because it's uncomfortable to feel angry,
Mhm.
especially if you have like some negative beliefs from your childhood about feeling angry. That's a whole nother thing. But regardless of how uncomfortable it is, if you can practice meeting yourself where you're at and give yourself that reparenting, and that unconditional presence to be like, oof, I feel angry right now. And that is okay. It is okay that I feel angry right now, even if you don't fully understand why yet, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
just owning and validating your own feelings, kind of like you were just saying, like that is such an important piece. It takes 30 seconds to do this.
It's hard, but
It takes like 30 seconds to do this.
it
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so then the next step is, this is where we bring in like the breathing and maybe some movement or vocal expression, right? So again, just giving yourself like 5 to 10 minutes to kind of own it and process so that you can calm yourself down and then get to the rest of your day. So I like to do two different types of breath, either one or the other or both,
Mhm.
and it really just allows that intense energy and emotion to kind of move safely through my system. So I'll demonstrate that now if that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
So so the first breath that I really like is a three-part breath. It's all in and out of the mouth. I'm going to step back a little bit so you can kind of see me. So you want to bring your breath first down into your belly, your solar plexus, and then you'll breathe into the chest, and then you'll let it out. So it looks kind of like this. Yeah. So it's all in and out of the mouth. I usually tell people to purse their lips because it can be really drying to the throat.
Okay.
So instead of trying to gasp it in, I mean, you can do, I mean, I do that when I'm crying. It's just kind of a natural, like, but if you're intentionally just trying to move your energy and you're not quite crying yet, perhaps, purse the lips. So and you can do that slow or fast, but just do that for maybe a minute or two, right? You might get a little dizzy or lightheaded. That's okay. Just kind of slow the breath down, maybe sit down. So that's one breath I really enjoy, right? So that 3-part breath, all in and out of the mouth. The other breath that I really enjoy that makes me feel more empowered too, in a way, is called the blow breath. This one's sometimes a little trickier to get the hang of, but if you just practice it, you'll get there. So this one's again all in and out of the mouth,
Okay.
and you're kind of be like forcefully blowing the air out like you're blowing out a candle. So, and you can kind of see that my solar plexus here is snapping or engaging.
Okay.
So I'm still breathing from here, right? So when we're trying to move energy through our system, especially with our breath, don't breathe just from here, your chest. You want to bring your breath all the way down into your rib cage and
Lower.
expand that, right?
Yeah.
So this breath I love because I like to do it fast. It feels really good. So if you want, you can practice with me, but it looks kind of like this. Yeah, there you go. It's
Mm-hmm.
fun. It's a fun one. You're still inhaling in between each breath, but it's very a passive inhale and a very intentional, forceful exhale. Like again, like you're blowing out a candle. So that one I really, really love when I'm trying to move anger as well.
Yeah.
So after either of those, here's the other important piece. Once you have done one of those or both of those activating breaths for just a couple of minutes,
Mm-hmm.
bring in a grounding breath. So anytime we're trying to because that's very activating for the nervous system, but the nervous system's already activated at this point. So it's just a safe way to move that activation and that energy. But then you want to kind of close out the practice and come back down and calm and regulate your nervous system. So you're going to switch your breathing in through the nose. Again, nice and deep. So just a simple inhale in through the nose and then exhale it out. Right, you can sigh it out, you can blow it out like you're blowing a candle. Just in through the nose, out through the mouth for a couple of slow, deep, relaxing breaths. Some people like to do box breathing when they're doing that because they need something to count. It gives their brain something to do too. So
Yeah.
all that looks like is, breathing in for the count of 3 or 4, holding it at the top for the count of 3 or 4, and then breathing it out. Again, count of 3 or 4, and then holding it at the bottom for that count. And just keep doing that, repeat a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your 2 activating breaths for a couple minutes, and then you do your calming breath for a minute or 2 after you've owned and validated your feelings.
Right.
So we'll pause there. We'll pause there because I know that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I like the doing that calming, kind of that like resetting, regulating breath afterwards, right? Because yeah, I mean those two breathing exercises are great, but yeah, high energy for sure. And anger especially can be a high energy emotion for many of us. Not
Yes.
not all the time, but a lot of the time it can be. And so having kind of those two exercises that you use to kind of like get some of that energy out, kind of like a way to like match it and kind of like let that flow in a safe and effective way. But then also having this kind of calming breath to then like, kind of going back to what we said earlier, using the body to regulate the mind, kind of that like, okay, let's bring it all kind of back down. Let's slow it all down rather than maintaining that high energy that the anger brought us
Right.
in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another, because anger is, like you said, it's such a high energy and it needs to move. So a lot of times we either stuff our anger because we're afraid of it, or we're afraid of the consequence, or we really don't know how to express it in a healthy way, so it's just like, oh, just stuff it down. Or we hang on to it and we get passive aggressive, and and it doesn't really move that way either. So why not use a tool where you can effectively move that ish through your body and then bring yourself back to that regulated state? And another thing I'll add to the few minutes that you're maybe doing a more activated breath and you're trying to move that energy is if you have the opportunity, it'll depend on where you are and what your setting is. But if you have the opportunity, bring in some vocal expression and some body movement. So vocal expression could be anything. It could you could yell. You could, if you're somewhere safe to scream, let it out. You could just talk out loud. This is your opportunity to, especially if you were in a conflict with someone and you needed to walk away and then you just need to get it out, like curse word, curse word, curse word, blah, 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 blah. Say all the things that you feel like need to be said, but that person's not in front of you, right? And then maybe even bringing, some people just like to bring a sigh or an ooh or an ah as they're, breathing and such. So any version of vocal expression is fine as long as you're in a safe place to do so.
Yeah.
And then body movement, right? Body movement could look like a lot of different things. I've gone so far as to air punch, you know, or punch a pillow,
Okay.
or just shake. You can just shake. My whole computer's going to shake here, but um, you can just shake the hands. You can shake the whole body. You can stand and just kind of not really twerk, but you're just kind of bouncing,
Right. Right.
Um, so anything, and people will dance. I mean, there's so many ways you can't do it wrong. It's just about, as you're breathing and focusing on your breath, and you know that you're intentionally moving some negative energy through your system. Let the voice be heard. Let the body move it in whatever way it intuitively feels like it needs to move. And
Yeah.
then come back down. Then calm yourself and ground yourself.
Yeah. So what has this looked like when you have been in a situation? I'm thinking about maybe when I've been in like work meetings where I couldn't really excuse myself in that moment. I just kind of had to stay until the meeting was done. Or maybe in a family situation where you're physically you're safe, but you got to wait it out. You aren't able to necessarily remove yourself. What has it looked like for you when you've found yourself in some of those situations and you can't get that first step of like pulling yourself into a separate space?
So you do it internally. So you literally start a dialogue within yourself. You start to focus on your breath. Maybe you just remove yourself from the conversation. So maybe you're still in the room, but you've stopped talking, you know. Um, Give yourself something to focus on in addition to your breath. So that's kind of first and foremost. It's like, hey, again, the recognition, right? The self recognition and the self parenting of, like, I'll start a dialogue with myself of, I can't leave the room right now. And I would like to, because I'm feeling some kind of way.
Mhm.
Let me focus on my breath. Again, probably more of a calming breath because you're still in the presence of other people. So this is where you'd have to basically table your processing for later.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like giving yourself that message of, hey, I acknowledge your anger right now. Like maybe there's a little, you could anthropomorphize like a little kid inside of you who's just like, having a tantrum, and say, it's okay, sweetie, to feel that way. You have your tantrum on the inside. We're going to be cool, calm, and collected right here, and we're going to breathe. And we're going to get to you later. Maybe that's right after work. Maybe that's tonight. As soon as you possibly can to then process that anger, you're just tabling it for a better time, a safer time, but you're not ignoring it. You're not stuffing it. Um, you know, that's basically what's worked for me. But again, it is about focusing on that breath, maybe counting as you breathe, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, or just in and out of the nose if you're sitting there, because sometimes it looks a little weird to be in front of the people you're around, but you can breathe a little less intensely and just in and out of the nose and a little more, quietly. But have that internal dialogue with yourself. Maybe place a hand on your chest while you're sitting there or something. Just cross your arms, give yourself a hug, tap your leg, just tell your body, like, I've got you. I recognize we're going through something right now and we're going to get to it later, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Really bringing some self-compassion there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if people want to learn more about breath work, whether it's maybe different kinds of breathing exercises they can do, or just more about like how it works, what are some resources that people can learn from?
So there is so much information online, honestly, if you just kind of Google. I know there's books. I don't have like specific books that I've used myself. All of my resources and materials were kind of already given to me through the certification program that I did, which was through Pause. So I would consider that a resource. So Pause Breathwork, they do teach about it. They put tons of information out there to the world about it. But there are so many different schools of thought around breath work. So I would say just start researching it and play around with it in a way that feels safe for you. If you're going to start playing around with the longer, more like meditative, transformational breathing, meaning you're breathing for more than 8 or 10 minutes at a time, I highly recommend working with a trauma informed practitioner as you're starting out and as you're developing your practice and exploring that modality because we all have trauma of some degree. And especially for those who've had more than others that they haven't yet processed, intense breath work like that or longer stints of breath work can actually bring up trauma that hasn't been processed. And if you don't have a proper guide and you're not prepared and you don't have a good support system for that, it could re-traumatize you. So
Yeah, and we do
it's
have to be
important just
careful.
to find.
Yes.
Yeah, you do have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking too, breath work, as with a lot of things that we can do with our body to regulate our mind, we do want to be cautious too of any of the exercises that might have a quick change in our heart rate. And so just kind of being
Mhm.
mindful of any health conditions or things that you might have going on. Make sure you check with a doctor if you do have any of those health concerns. Um,
Yes.
so if people want to connect with you and maybe learn more about your services, maybe work with you on breath work or some of the other things that you offer, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's just my first and last name, jessicalagoy.com. And that gives you literally all my offerings. So I do work mostly virtually so that I can work with people from all over, but I also do some in-person workshops and things like that in my local community in the Raleigh area. And I also have a retreat that is going to be in Costa Rica next February. So I have a lot of different ways that you can work with me, all the way from an online membership that's monthly, that's like 73 cents a day with monthly breath work and self-love videos and things like that, all the way up to my coaching programs and my retreats. So my website pretty much has everything on there, as well as my Instagram, which is the same thing, just at Jessica LaGoy.
And all that stuff is linked below the video so you guys can find her easily. Thank you so much for sharing with us this exercise today and these three different like strategies for using breath work. I think I like the balance of kind of the high energy with the calming breath and using those two hand in hand or three hand in hand if you've got time and want to do all
Yeah.
three of those. Yeah,
Yeah.
but something really practical. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love doing this work and teaching about this. So I'm so glad that you were open to bringing me on today.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that button so you're up to date when new episodes come out, and we'll see you next time.